as a member of banking, I think it's going to take at least 2 hearings for us to be able to understand the pros and the cons of this legislation and understand the legislation itself. We have to be sure in this legislation, given that 1 in 5 Americans own cryptocurrency, we have to make sure in this legislation, Mr. President, that we're striking the right balance in jurisdiction between the CFTC and the SEC. We have to make sure in this legislation that we're coordinating closely with another Senate committee, the Senate Agriculture Committee, because it has jurisdiction of the CFTC and will play just as important, if not a more important role in this legislation as the Banking Committee. We're going to have to address in this legislation some concerns of the banking community. The banking community, after we passed the Genius Act, remember the Genius Act was just about stable coins. The banking committee is arguing the banking community, our banks, are arguing very persuasively that there were some mistakes made in the Genius Act, which, as I just said, regulates stable coins. Frankly, I don't know if that's accurate or not. That's what we need a hearing for, but I think the banking community needs to be heard on this issue. If we did make some mistakes, I'm sorry, Mr. President. If we did make some mistakes in the Genius Act with respect to American banks, I want us to correct it. I'm not saying we did or we didn't. I've heard both sides of the argument. But my point is that we're going to have to take up that issue as well in the hearing, because the banking community accommodate their concerns about the mistakes, if any, that we made in the Genius Act. We're going to have to spend a lot of time in these hearings and in drafting the legislation, making sure that we are addressing things like tokenized securities. This complicated stuff. It's a way, basically, to trade a stock using blockchain technology without owning the stock. We've got to make sure we get that right. An issue will be raised, I'm sure, about deposit insurance. Cryptocurrency is, it's currency in the eyes of many people. And I can see the day when the American people will ask us to address the issue. Should deposit insurance legislation that I just referred to that was passed by the House. No one's suggesting this, but I certainly would disagree if they suggested that we just ignore that legislation. A lot of work went into it. I spent a lot of time reading it, and I'm going to have to spend more time reading it. It's very interesting, but there's some good work there. And I want to be able to compare the Clarity Act passed by the House with the Senate's market structure legislation. So perhaps we can pick the best of each. And that would be an appropriate topic of a hearing as well. And these issues I'm addressing are illustrative. They're not exhaustive. But we also need to address the issue of what, if any, fiduciary responsibility those who participate in the digital assets markets have. I'm talking about commodity brokers, I'm talking digital commodity brokers. I'm talking about digital commodity dealers. Should they have a fiduciary obligation to their customers, to their clients? I'm talking about the digital commodity exchanges. What should their duty to their clients be? Should it be a fiduciary obligation? Should it be something less? These are weighty issues. These are important issues. These are not issues that you raise and solve over a weekend. But I wanted to start talking about this bill, Mr. President, because it's one of the most important pieces of legislation that this body will consider. It may not be the sexiest, and may not be the most interesting to some, but it's when 1 in 5 Americans own cryptocurrency, it's certainly important. So I'll probably be talking about this issue several more times on this floor, but as the Senate moves forward with our digital assets market structure legislation, I hope we'll move it quickly, but I hope we'll move deliberately. I hope we'll take the time to hold the hearings, and again, I think it's going to take more than one hearing to address these weighty topics, and then an additional time once we get a bill to mark it up, as we say, to amend it and make sure that we do the job for the American people. And with that, Mr. President, I suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alston-Brooks.
Mr. President.
The senator from New Jersey.
Mr. President, I asked unanimous consent that the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I rise today as federal servants, civil servants will check their mail or check their bank accounts and not see the money that they've earned, for doing the work of the American people. Because hundreds of thousands of civil servants, including roughly 750,000 furloughed government workers, will sit down at the kitchen table tonight and ask some hard questions. Which bills do we pay? What do we do to cut back? How long can we go without a paycheck? These are tough questions, but they are only being asked because President Trump and Speaker Johnson and others have decided that they would rather plunge our government into a shutdown rather than address healthcare cost crisis for millions of Americans that are facing right now these incredibly challenging debates. Now, there are a lot of stories of our public servants struggling in this moment, and I understand that some of my colleagues haven't had a chance to hear them. So I wanted to come to the floor today to share my own story. I started my career as a public servant, as a State Department officer. I worked for the federal government. It was the honor of my lifetime. I emphasize that I was career, not a political appointee. I swore an oath to the Constitution, and I remember how proud I was to be able to raise my hand and recite that oath. I remember very clearly and vividly in 2013, I was working on counterterrorism, trying to keep our nation safe. And while I was doing that work of national security, political leaders on the Hill at that time hit an impasse, and our government went into a shutdown. I remember how distant that felt for me with the work that I do, and I'm just trying to show up and do work every day to be able to keep our country safe, to be able to watch out for terrorist groups that try to do us and our allies and our partners harm. Why was it that now I was being asked to show up to work every single day and not receive a paycheck? In particular, I was very early in my career, not making very much money, turned down high-paying jobs so I could serve my country. And I did it because I was proud to be a public servant, proud to be amongst the many others that are willing to put our country before our own families, that we're part of something bigger than all of us. But through that period, when we were going through that shutdown, and to remind people, that one lasted 16 days. At the time, that was the second longest shutdown in American history. That hundreds of thousands of federal employees did not receive their full paychecks during that shutdown. And at the time, we didn't have guarantee and promise that we would actually get back pay for the work that we were doing. It was challenging. I remember having to call my own family and ask them what I should be doing. Try to think through what I can be doing to make sure that I can pay the bills when that comes up. Had no idea how long the shutdown would go for, and felt so distant. I had no way as a civil servant to influence the discussions on the Hill and the leaders that were making this decision. I remember reading afterwards, the Office of Management and Budget put together a report following the shutdown. And in that report, they quoted an EPA employee who spoke with the Washington Post. That employee said, quote, "We love public service. We're very committed to our jobs and the mission of our agency, but it's just too unstable." And I remember that instability. My story is not unique. And that's why when I was actually sworn into Congress in January 2019, now again, I was sworn into Congress in the middle of a government shutdown, a shutdown that has still to this day recognized as the longest shutdown ever. And I remember I was sworn into the government shutdown, and I found out something that just shocked me, which is that the president and members of Congress continue to get paid during the shutdown. I just could not believe it. That after what I had gone through as a career public servant, doing the work of the country, continuing to show up to work each and every day, not receiving a paycheck, then realizing that 435 people in the House, 100 people in the Senate, and the President of the United States continue to get a paycheck. They're the only ones in the entire government that continue to get paid. I remember at that point, I decided I was going to refuse my pay until the shutdown was over. And I'm continuing to do that with this shutdown because I still believe in those old sayings that officers eat last, that the leaders eat last, but that by taking our pay during this crisis, especially on this day when so many others are not, we are showing that we're fine having a full plate while others go without. That's not leadership. That is not acceptable. If leaders are being paid while others are not, you can see why so many Americans believe that politicians are playing with other people's chips, that they don't feel the impact of their actions. And that's dangerous because it's easy to then think about all this as a game and to lose sight of the actual impacts on American families. It's something I talked about with two public servants in New Jersey during the first week of the shutdown. These are federal workers who have so much on the line in this fight. But it's important to remember that for them, this fight didn't begin with the shutdown. The stresses that federal workers are facing didn't start on October 1st. It started on January 20th. It started with Russell Vogt, the scribe of Project 2025 and the director of the Office of Management and Budget, saying that he wants federal workers to be, quote, in trauma. Saying that he wants our public servants, the people that help educate your kids, pave your roads, keep you safe, to, quote, not want to go to work because they are increasingly viewed as villains. That's what the OMB, the current OMB director, the mastermind of this shutdown, has said, that he wants our public servants to be viewed as villains. And let me tell you something, that's something I heard from those federal workers I sat down with. So congratulations, Russell Vogt, your dream has come true. These federal public servants I talked to said that they wake up every day feeling like they have been made to be like the enemy, to be viewed in that way by the American people. They talked about the shooting at the Center for Disease Control, the attacks upon public servants. That word, enemy, is something we've seen from President Trump himself. He's repeatedly used the phrase, quote, enemy from within, when talking about people who he perceives as his enemies. Fellow Americans who he thinks he's engaged in a war from within. I want to be clear. The people I sat down with earlier this month, they're not the enemy. They're not showing up to work every day to go to war against Donald Trump. They're showing up to work every day because they believe in service. They're showing up to work every day because they believe that they have an obligation as Americans to work for something bigger than themselves. We owe them better than what they're seeing right now and how they're being treated. We owe them better than a politics that demonizes them and their work. What we see right now, though, is that we don't even have, while our public servants are not getting paid through this shutdown, even though so many of them are showing up to work, I can tell you they are furious that we have a House of Representatives that doesn't even show up, that we have Speaker Johnson continuing to give House Republicans a paid vacation, even though they're not even showing up to work and doing their job. And we also see the president and his mob boss-like cronies like Russell Vought and Stephen Miller continuing to step up and use our government, weaponizing it as a tool for political retribution and political extortion. We owe our public servants better. We owe them not just an end to this shutdown, but an end to the politics that makes our public servants an enemy or a tool. Next year is the 250th anniversary of our nation's independence. It is a chance to reaffirm who we are as Americans and what we believe in. I believe in service. I believe in public servants. I believe that the way out of this tailspin that we're in as a country is to try to reignite a new era of public service in this country. Have a new ask not what this country can do for you kind of moment. And I believe that we must do everything we can right now to support our public servants by, first of all, having the House of Representatives get back to work so we can have the negotiations, we can have the discussions needed to be able to address the healthcare crisis impacting American families, and reopen our government so that every public servant can have peace of mind and dignity of knowing that their service has been recognized. It's time to support our public servants. It's time that we work to end this shutdown. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Never looked so nice. We're getting great compliments, and you see outside how that's come out. It's been great. We make a lot of improvements to the White House, and we're doing that. One of the things you should be looking at is the Palm Court, because that's been totally redone. So we like to preserve and make better the White House, and that's really what's happened, and we're getting tremendous reviews, and we appreciate it. But we're here for a different reason. It's called Operation Summer Heat, which is an appropriate term in light of what we're doing. And early yesterday morning, I returned from the Middle East, where we celebrated a historic agreement to end years of suffering and conflict. Amazing. Every country came together. I mean, even the enemies came out and totally endorsed it. Everybody. I've never seen anything like it. Nobody's seen anything like it. And just as we are forging peace and stability abroad, we're also restoring peace and stability at home. And you see that in Washington, D.C., maybe better than any place, because we got there, and within 12 days it was very good. And within 30 days, it's been as safe as any city in the country. It's been great. Took out 1,700 people, got them out. These are career criminals in many cases, and people that shouldn't have been allowed in by the Biden administration. Historically, the summer months have been a time when violent crime soar, as you know, but not under President Trump. Today, we're announcing the results of a sweeping law enforcement effort known as Operation Summer Heat. We were in many cities that people didn't know about. We kept it a little quiet, and it had a big impact, and you'll hear that in a second. But over the past few months, FBI offices in all 50 states made crushing violent crime a top enforcement priority. That's what they did, rounding up and arresting thousands of the most violent and dangerous criminals. And these are among the most dangerous and violent people in the world. They were allowed, in many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases, they were allowed in by a very foolish, actually stupid, open border policy. Just anybody could have come in. They emptied out their jails, their prisons, their mental institutions. They emptied them into our country. And the people behind me have done an incredible job, because if we didn't have that administration, it would have been so much easier. They allowed millions of people in this country that shouldn't have been allowed, including over 11,000 murderers, half of whom murdered more than one person. And many of them are gone now, or they're put in prison, because we don't want to have them come back. So we literally put them in our prison, which we don't want to do. But we bring them back to their countries. Working with state and local partners, the FBI arrested over 8,000 violent criminals during the course of this period. In major cities like in New Orleans, Nashville, we saw a 250% increase in arrests. And we really went after the bad ones. These include 725 individuals wanted for violent crimes against children and murderers. These arrests are in addition to the work of our historic federal task forces that make D.C. Safe Task Force has been unbelievable. I mean, the job they've done, it's incredible. And it's been so nice because so many people, they're going out to dinner and they're having dinners. They didn't go out for 4 years. And now they're going out 3 times a week. Restaurants are opening. Restaurants are full. And usually that means a lot of good things. But restaurants that were closed are now opening up. And everybody's happy. It's nobody's ever seen anything like it, actually. And everybody feels safe. You can have a child walk right through the middle of Washington, D.C., and nothing's going to happen. We were losing more than 1 person a week in Washington. They're being killed on an average of over 1 a week. The Make D.C. Safe Task Force has been incredible, and the Make Memphis Safe Task Force is having very similar results. It's much earlier, but we've been there for a week and a half, but I'm hearing the results are pretty incredible, and you'll hear about that. They're mobilizing more than 20 federal agencies for the largest law enforcement operation targeting violent criminals in American history. As a result of these efforts, violent crime declined nearly 20% nationwide compared to the same period last year, and it was the safest and most peaceful summer in 2 decades. And honestly, we haven't really even gotten going yet. If we didn't have to fight all of these radical left governors, we could have had Chicago taken care of, as an example. They had, in a short period of time, 4,000 murders in Chicago, and we have to listen to this man stand up and say that we're bad people. And the people of Chicago are walking around with MAGA hats. You have women, beautiful black women, walking around with MAGA hats. Please let the president in, and we don't care how he does it. They're not interested in National Guard or Army, Navy, bring them in. Marines, bring in the Marines. They just want the crime to stop. And more so because of the success that we had in D.C. I think if we didn't have that success, nobody would even believe it. So I want to congratulate all of the incredible law enforcement professionals joining us today, especially Attorney General Pam Bondi, who's terrific, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who is a fantastic legal talent. He really is. He's a great guy, too. And, of course, FBI Director Kash Patel. They have worked so hard on this and other things. Since the start of the administration, the FBI has arrested over 23,000 violent criminals, more than double the number arrested in the final year of the Biden disaster. The FBI has also destroyed or severely disrupted more than 170 organized criminal enterprises and gangs, 1,600 of the most violent gangs, and confiscated over 6,000 illegal firearms. And they've tracked down and arrested 4 fugitives on the most wanted list, 4 of the most wanted. Actually, 2 of them were the most wanted fugitives in the world. There's still much more work to be done, which is why the FBI continues to work alongside the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of War to defend. And Pete Hegseth has been fantastic, by the way, on this too, on other things, but on this too. To defend law and order and combat violent crime, arrest illegal aliens, and make American cities the safest in the world. And when I campaigned, I talked about crime, but I never knew that we were going to get into it like we did. You know, I mean, I used to watch these cities with the murders. Chicago recently had one deal where they had 11 murders in one weekend, and they said, well, yeah, but it was a holiday weekend. They actually told me that was the reason, like it was okay because it was a holiday. It was Labor Day. These people are the worst. They really have to, they better, I tell you what, the people in Chicago and the people in places like that can be fixed. At some point, it gets to where you can't fix it anymore. It's too far gone. And we have some cities like that. But these are great cities that can be fixed. I'm going to be strongly recommending, at the request of government officials, which is always nice, that you start looking at San Francisco. I think we can make San Francisco. There's one of our great cities 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and now it's a mess. And we have great support in San Francisco, so I'd like to recommend that for inclusion, maybe in your next group. You'll get great support. Every American deserves to live in a community where they're not afraid of being mugged, murdered, robbed, raped, assaulted, or shot. And that's exactly what our administration is working to deliver. I didn't realize I was going to make this such a big factor in the I didn't really campaign. I campaigned on crime, but I never thought we'd go into every city and take a really safe city that we've all been living with for years and make them safe. And now it's like a passion for me, and it's a passion for the people behind me. So I didn't get elected. I did get elected for crime, but I didn't get elected for what we're doing. This is many, many steps above. And I want to thank Stephen Miller, who's right back in the audience right there. I'd love to have him. I love watching him on television. I'd love to have him come up and explain his true feelings, but maybe not his truest feelings. That might be going a little bit too far. But Stephen, thank you for doing an unbelievable job. And the people of this country love you, I'll tell you, and they love what you say about crime and stopping crime. So now I'd like to ask Director Patel to say a few words, and then Pam and Todd also. And I just want to congratulate them. This is an amazing thing, and we're just at the start. We're going to go into other cities that we're not talking about purposely. We're getting ready to go in. And when they go in, like Kash, as an example, told me that people didn't even know. 5 months ago, they went into Chicago, and they started doing a lot of work in Chicago. And we brought the numbers down a little bit. And but that really was just preparatory work for what we're going to do with the surge. We're going to have a surge of strong, good people, patriots, and they're going to go in, they straighten it all out. So a lot of these cities we're already working on, but we don't do it with a big flavor. But in a little while, you're going to see some numbers that you're not going to believe. And I think you probably start with Memphis, because I'm hearing the numbers are much quicker than we even thought possible. But again, D.C. it speaks for itself. Chicago is going to be okay. We're going to save Chicago. And I told you, and I told them, a very respected man, the head of the Union Pacific, said, "Sir, save Chicago. It can be saved." And the way he said it, it was like, can you believe it? We're trying to save Chicago. But I understood exactly what he wants, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to save all of our cities, and we're going to make them essentially crime-free, like other countries have crime-free. If you go all over the world, you go to the world, you hear Afghanistan and you hear all these different places. Our crime in certain cities is worse than anything they can even imagine. And we're not going to have that any longer. It's going to stop, and it stops right here. Kash, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. What I'd like to do is just highlight some of the outstanding work that the men and women of the FBI have been doing. And thanks to your brave leadership and the mandate you were given by the American people to not only defend the homeland but crush violent crime, you tasked us with our great partners at the Department of Justice and the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General to start making arrests and bring prosecutions and safeguard our cities. And you said it, this is just the beginning. In just 7 months, I hope the media takes a look at every one of these charts, because these are the best numbers for fighting crime in U.S. history, and it's only 7 months in. And to do that, our vehicle to do it of choice was Operation Summer Heat, which the FBI architected to go after violent criminals. And in just a 3-month span, you had 8,700 arrests of violent criminals. You had 2,200 firearms seized off the streets permanently to safeguard our communities. You had 421 kilograms of fentanyl seized. Just to put that in perspective, that's enough to kill 55 million Americans alone. You had 45,000 kilograms of cocaine seized, and thanks to our Department of Justice partners, you had 2,100 indictments in 3 months, from June to September alone. Mr. President, that in and of itself would be historic for a 4-year presidency. You did that in 7 months because you let good cops be cops. You partnered us with the right people at the Department of Justice to put the handcuffs on and bring them to court and put them in prison. And if that weren't enough, when you look at the year, for the entire 7-month period that we're talking about here, if you look at the past 4 years of the Biden administration, 16,000, 17,000, 15,000, 15,000. That's the number of arrests year over year of violent felons in this country for the Biden administration. Mr. President, in 7 months, you have 28,600 arrests of violent felons in just 7 months alone, because of your leadership and the dedication of the men and women at the FBI who want to go out there and do the job they were prevented from doing because that department used to be weaponized and politicized. And this is what happens when you take out the fangs of weaponization. This number is historic by every metric. 28,000 people have been arrested, violent felons alone. And then when you go over there and look at some of these charts, if you don't mind, I'll just hop over here. Look at the metrics for not just violent but the homeland. Mr. President, during your administration, the FBI has found and located 5,400 children. That is a 30% increase year-to-date over the last administration. Violent crimes against children arrests alone are up 10%. Gang arrests are up 210% in the last 7 months alone. And transnational organized crime, which Stephen Miller has been a great partner in, is up over 12% alone. These numbers are historic just as a snapshot. But just so people don't think we're focusing on violent crime alone, the national security mission, Mr. President, under your leadership has never been stronger. We have gone after espionage activities against our main counterparts in China, Russia, and Iran. In China alone, we've had over a 50% increase in espionage arrests alone in prosecution. In Iran, we have had a 50% increase, again, in espionage cases. And in Russia, we've had a 33% increase in espionage cases alone. When it comes to counterterrorism, year to date, we have 125 arrests this year versus 100 last year, year to date alone. And when it comes to the cyber criminal activities, which are some of the largest enterprises plaguing everyday Americans, we at the FBI have put out a mission to go after cyber criminals like never before. Last year, they had, in total, 191. This year, you already have 252 arrests. 52 arrests of violent cyber criminals who are stealing from senior citizens, who are violating our children's rights and freedoms, and who are violating everyday Americans. These programs are record. And two of the things I'll finish with that I'm most proud of, Mr. President, this FBI. Fentanyl. As you know, it's a scourge that is killing our youth, 100,000 plus a year. To date, the FBI has seized 1,900 kilograms of fentanyl. That's enough lethal doses to kill 127 million Americans alone, to date. And if that weren't enough, Mr. President, you said we have to go after the worst of the worst. And you empowered our Department of Justice, our Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, and the Deputy Director at the FBI, led the charge, not just on summer heat, but he also led the charge to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives. These people have been on the run for years. And in 7 months, you captured not one, not two, not three, but 4 of the FBI's most top 10 fugitives. 4. And just to put that in perspective, Mr. President, the Biden administration captured 4 in all of 4 years. You're on 7, and we're going to get to 10. We're going to get to 10 of 10. This includes a lady who murdered her 6-year-old handicapped child and fled to India. We got her in 2 months. This includes a narco trafficker. This includes a sex trafficker. This includes another first-degree murderer and gangbang. These people were on the run because of the prior administration's reckless policies that destroyed our communities. And you came in and with a mandate said, go after the worst of the worst. This is just the beginning. This is what happens when you let good cops be good cops at the FBI. Mr. President, I just want to thank you for your incredible leadership, our brave partnership with prosecutors who know how to bring cases and make sure these arrests stick. And that's what the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General have led the charge across this country, because arrests without prosecutions are meaningless. We are deterring criminals from doing this activity. We are preventing criminals from coming into America, and we are absolutely crushing violent crime like never before and defending this homeland, sir. And not to mention, I almost forgot this one, it took you, sir, 2 weeks to get the Abbey Gate bomber. Joe Biden had 4 years to look for him. You got him in 2 weeks, thanks to the interagency effort by the FBI and the CIA, went to Pakistan, and now 13 brave warriors who were sentenced to murder because of disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal. They have justice, their families have a peace of mind, and we're going to continue to find the others, Mr. President. On behalf of the FBI, sir, I just want to thank you.
Thank you very much, Kash. Great job. Very good. Very impressive. Pam, would you like to say something, please?
President Trump, the men and women of law enforcement say 2 things to me repeatedly. First, you have taken the handcuffs off them and let them do their jobs, and you let cops be cops. That's why all this is happening. The director, the deputy director are working around the clock. All of these great men and women in the FBI, they have families at home, and they are working during a government shutdown right now. Many of them have small children. Many of them, I was talking to an agent this morning, many of them have babies at home, and they are working around the clock to not only keep our country, but our world safe. And that's what Operation Summer Heat did. Thank you, Director, and to the Deputy Director for everything you did on behalf of the Department of Justice, and you're going to continue to keep doing. And they set the stage for what we're doing in Memphis. You're going to hear a lot more about that, our joint task force next week, but they set the stage for Memphis. And last night alone in Memphis, there were almost 70 arrests. There were 12 guns seized, and there was a 70-year-old man arrested as a result of our operation in Memphis who raped a child under the age of 3. That one case makes everything we're doing worthwhile. So thank you all for being here on behalf of both of us. Thank you, President Trump.
Todd, you want to say something?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. So this is a great day, and I think there's stats that the director talked about which are important, but I want to give 2 examples of what summer heat has done that actually will apply hopefully to everybody in this room. The first is for over 4 years during the last administration, there was a hotel in a town, the middle of a town in Alaska, that was being run as a drug den. There were over 1,000 calls to 911 over 4.5 year period. There were multiple violent crimes, drug dealers, overdoses, and murders at this one hotel, ruining a community. Summer Heat went in there. It's not only arrested all the participants that were controlling the hotel, but seized the hotel. And so that's one example of what summer heat means to everyday Americans that just want to live in peace. The second example is a large narcotics trafficking group that was selling fentanyl in the state of Washington. They were shipping fentanyl and using commercial aircraft, putting fentanyl pills and powder in suitcases, flying them from the southwest border, mostly Arizona, all the way to Washington. It had been going on for an extremely long time, and the entire organization was arrested. And I say those 2 examples because it's easy to look at the board and see 1,000 arrests. How much different is our communities now compared to the past 4 years? But there's actual life examples. Every one of these arrests means that our streets are safer, and that's because of the work of this administration, of President Trump and Director Patel. So I will tell you, Attorney General Bondi and I are together every day with Director Patel, figuring out ways that we can continue to do this work, and it's not going to stop. Like the Attorney General said, and like the President said, this is just the beginning, or phase 1, or a start, whatever you want to say, but it will continue on. So thank you, Mr. President, and thank you very much, Director Patel.
And Mr. President, just one last thank you from the men and women at the FBI. You found a way to get these individuals paid during a government shutdown, our 1811 agents. So on behalf of the FBI, it's a great debt that we owe you, sir. They're now allowed to pay for their families, so thank you.
And the military. Good.
That's right.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, please? Brian, go ahead.
Mr. President, first of all, I know the feedback I'm getting from the American people, but they want to say thank you. Law and order is not an option in this country. It's a mandate. So I know the American people thank you for that. In terms of the guns that have been taken off the street, do you have a number of how many guns were taken away from someone that had a prior felony or a previous crime that perhaps we can prosecute that? Because I know that wasn't the case under Joe Biden.
We don't take guns off the streets of people that are allowed to have guns. So every gun that we're taking off the street is because it belongs to somebody who is not allowed to have it. Could be a felon, could be somebody who hears illegally. There's all sorts of conditions. But if there's a gun taken off the streets by the FBI, it's because the person who has it is not allowed to. It's not somebody who's lawfully allowed to have it. So every single one of those guns were taken off of people that aren't allowed to have them.
And not including the FBI, all of the other agencies. ATF alone, since January 20th, has removed over 25,000 illegal guns off our streets, just since President Trump's been in office.
And Mr. President, if I could follow up on that, could there be any further conversation to have national concealed carry apply to actual DC? Like if you had a driver's license in Texas and you had a permit, of course you could drive.
Well, as you know, they've been talking about that for a long time. It's an interesting question. A lot of people feel strongly both ways, but we are talking about that, Brian. Thank you.
Mr. President, on Venezuelan boats, I want to ask you, why not have the Coast Guard stop them, which it is empowered by law to do? You know, this way you can confirm who's on the boat and ensure that they're doing what you suspect.
Because we've been doing that for 30 years, and it has been totally ineffective. They have faster boats. Some of these boats are seriously, I mean, they're world-class speedboats, but they're not faster than missiles. But we've been trying to do that for years, and so much of the drugs, 25-30%, would come in through the seas. Right now we have, I would say, none coming in through the seas. In fact, I don't know about the fishing industry. If you want to go fishing, a lot of people aren't deciding to even go fishing. We've almost totally stopped it by sea. Now we'll stop it by land.
What's the next
But
step?
it never worked. It never worked when you did it in a very politically correct manner.
What's the next step in this war on cartels, and are you considering options, are you considering strikes on land?
Well, I don't want to tell you exactly, but we are certainly looking at land now because we've got the sea very well under control. We've had a couple of days where there isn't a boat to be found. And that, I view that as a good thing, not a bad thing. But we had tremendous amounts coming in by boats, by very expensive boats. They have a lot of money, very fast, very expensive boats that were pretty big. And the way you look at it is every boat that we knock out, we save 25,000 American lives. So every time you see a boat and you feel badly, you say, wow, that's rough. It is rough, but if you lose 3 people and save 25,000 people, these are people that are killing our population. Every boat is saving 25,000 lives, and you can see it. The boats get hit, and you see that fentanyl all over the ocean. It's like floating in bags. It's all over the place, and it's a tremendous. We're saving tremendous amounts of lives. Yeah,
Mr.
please.
President, on that issue.
I know you've talked about, I have a question for you, and then I also have a question for Director Patel. I know you talked about having some distaste for Boston recently. Is this one of those cities that you might be looking into, and can you give us a hint about other cities that you might be
You're
sending
saying for
federal
where?
funds?
For where?
For Boston.
Yeah, well, Boston has a bad mayor who at least is a reasonable IQ person. Most of them are low IQ, but and they're so bad. I mean, what's going on in Chicago is just, you'd think the guy would say, hey, look, we have a problem, Mr. President. Could you come in and straighten it out? We could have that done in a month if we had their cooperation. It's going to be done anyway, but we could have it done in a month. Yeah, Boston, she's got 4 areas that are, wrong. And, somebody said, would we think about taking the World Cup away from Boston if they don't straighten it out? And the answer is yes. We have the right to do that with FIFA. So if we think that LA is going to be bad, or we think that applies a little bit to the Olympics too, but we'll talk about FIFA first. FIFA is very hot. If we think there's any reason that, whether it's Boston or anywhere else, that they're not doing their job, we're going to take those World Cup games and move them someplace else.
Thank you. And then Director Patel, there's been so many conspiracy theories swirling around about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Do you have any updates for us, especially in light of all the online content that everyone's been talking about?
The only thing we deal with at the FBI and the Department of Justice is facts, and we delivered in record speed a manhunt to capture Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin in 33 hours. And if you put that in perspective to Luigi Mangione or the Boston bomber, they took them 5 days and a police officer lost their life in their manhunt. We are running out absolutely every single lead, and the best thing we can do to honor my friend Charlie Kirk's life is to make sure that everyone involved is prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and that's what we're focused on, investigating the facts, not trading in conspiracy theories.
Okay?
Mr. President, thank you so much.
Thank you.
In light of China's export curbs on rare earths, do you view India as a reliable partner going forward? And are you planning to meet Prime Minister Modi in Malaysia? Are you open to talks in terms of
Yeah,
trade?
sure. He's a friend of mine. We have a great relationship. He just said that 2 days ago, as you know. We have a great relationship. No, we were not happy with him buying oil from Russia, because that lets Russia continue on with this ridiculous war where they've lost 1.5 million people, by the way. Russia's lost 1.5 million people, soldiers mostly. This is a war that should have never started, but it's a war that Russia should have won in the first week, and they're going into the 4th year. And I want to see it stop. So I was not happy that India was buying oil. And he assured me today that they will not be buying oil from Russia. That's a big stop. Now I got to get China to do the same thing. That is relatively easy compared to what we just did over the last week in the Middle East. Middle East was 3,000 years, and we got it done. This is 3 years, and I think we'll get it done. I think that President Putin, I think he wants to get it done. We'll see. There's a great animosity between him and Zelensky. You probably have noticed, right? And I think it's hurting the process. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, thank you. Curious, why did you authorize the CIA to go into Venezuela? And is there more information you can share about these strikes on the alleged
Well, I can't
drug
do
busts in
that,
the
but
Caribbean?
I authorized for 2 reasons, really. Number one, they have emptied their prisons into the United States of America. They came in through the Well, they came in through the border. They came in because we had an open border policy. And as soon as I heard that, I said, a lot of these countries, they're not the only country, but they're the worst abuser. And they've entered they've allowed thousands and thousands of prisoners, mental institution, people from mental institutions, insane asylums, emptied out into the United States. We're bringing them back. But that's a really bad, and they did it at a level that probably not, many countries have done it, but not like Venezuela. They were down and dirty. And the other thing are drugs. We have a lot of drugs coming in from Venezuela. And a lot of the Venezuelan drugs come in through the sea, so you get to see that. But we're going to stop them by land also.
Does the CIA have authority to take out Maduro?
Oh, I don't want to answer a question like that. That's a ridiculous question for me to be given. Not really a ridiculous question, but wouldn't it be a ridiculous question for me to answer? But I think Venezuela's feeling heat, but I think a lot of other countries are feeling heat too. We're not going to let this country, our country, be ruined because other people want to drop, as you say, their worst. They have given us their worst. They've loaded up our country with prisoners, with mentally ill people that are seriously ill, criminally ill. And we're not going to take it. And so, I mean, it's just one of those things. And I can tell you, we've taken care of the sea. There's nobody, and we're watching. We're watching. And if we see it, we'll save it. Yeah, please.
On the ships, though, sir, there are Republicans and Democrats up on the Hill concerned that in the briefings they've gotten about those attacks, they're not necessarily getting information about who was on them and what exactly was on those ships. Can you ensure that at
but
least
they are
lawmakers
given
will be told that?
information that they were loaded up with drugs, and that's the thing that matters. When they're loaded up with drugs, they're fair game. And every one of those ships were, they're not ships, they're boats, they're speedboats. They're extremely fast, record-setting type speedboats that cost a lot of money, and they have a lot of money because they're drug sellers. But they know one thing, and they all have the same thing in common. There's drug dust. They call it drug dust. They call it fentanyl dust all over the boat after those bombs go off. And you can take along.
Attack them, though, that there are
We know before. We know when they go out. We know we have much information about each boat that goes out. Deep, strong information. Yeah, please.
Sir, you're going to have Vladimir Zelensky here this week. What is your message at this stage of the war for him? And shy of tomahawks.
To who is that?
For Zelensky.
Yeah.
And shy of tomahawks for Ukraine. Are you considering other options, and will you speak with Vladimir Putin about
No, we're looking at other options. We are. President Zelensky's coming in. I'm not a fan of the war. I'm not a fan of the way it started. It should have never happened. It wouldn't have started if I were president. The election was rigged. And because of that, we lost a lot of lives have been lost because of that war. Not American lives, but if I can save a lot of lives, that's why I'm in it. I want to save lives. I've had 8 wars. The Prime Minister of Pakistan got up the other day, said so beautifully, says, you saved millions of lives. He told that to a group of people right in this office. He said, the president saved millions of lives. And I think what he's referring to is the fact that that would have been with India a nuclear war. That was getting very close. You know, 7 planes, they don't talk about it, but 7 aircraft were shot down. In fact, we have the new ambassador to India right here. They're well represented. You better represent us, not them, okay? Yeah. But Sergio's going to do a great job. He's going to do a great job. But no, we'll be talking about the war with him, and we'll be talking about, I mean, they want to go offensive. I'll make a determination on that, but they would like to go offensive, you know that, and we'll have to make a determination.
President, given you have the FBI Director and Attorney General here today, Jim Jordan has asked Jack Smith to appear in front of the House Judiciary.
You mean deranged, Jack? He's a deranged individual, yeah?
He's asked him to...
Well, they should. I'm surprised it takes so long. You know, we're talking about violent crime. What about the crime against a political opponent? That's what we have to talk about, too.
Jordan would like to understand the full extent to which the Biden-Harris Justice Department weaponized federal law enforcement. What do you think the committee will find out, Mr. Smith?
I think it was the worst weaponization of a political opponent in the history of the world, let alone this country. And I hope that everybody's, you know, they're involved in it. I'm not. I'm the one that had to suffer through it and ultimately win. But what they did was criminal. Deranged Jack Smith, in my opinion, is a criminal. And I noticed his interviewer was, I think that was Weissman. And I hope they're going to look into Weissman, too. Weissman's a bad guy, And he had somebody in, Lisa, who was his puppet, worked in the office really as the top person. And I think that she should be looked at very strongly. There was tremendous criminal activity having to do. If we don't have fair elections in this country, we're not going to have a country. And I've said it from the beginning, fair elections and borders. And we need also fair press, because if you don't have fair press, it's very tough. And we've got the strongest border of anybody. Nobody has a border. We have a border where the numbers just came out again. You saw 0 people came in illegally. Now, we do take people into our country legally, but 0 people. But, you know, you're talking about a different subject. You're talking about political crime. They have committed massive political crime. I hope they're looking at Shifty Schiff. I hope they're looking at all these people. And I'm allowed to find out. I'm allowed to, you know, I'm, in theory, the chief law enforcement officer. But I have a very good, talented group. This is about something else. But I hope they're looking at political crime, because there's never been so much political crime against a political opponent as what I had to go through. They raided my house in Florida. It was an illegal raid. I have a lawsuit that was doing very well. And when I became president, I said, I'm sort of suing myself. I don't know, how do you settle the lawsuit? I'll say, give me X dollars, right? And I don't know what to do with the lawsuit. It's a great lawsuit. And now I won. It sort of looks bad. I'm suing myself, right? So I don't know, but that was a lawsuit that was very strong, very powerful. They raided illegally my house in Florida, Mar-a-Lago. They went through the drawers of my young son. They went through all of the cabinets and drawers of the First Lady. She walked in, she said, wow, what happened? Because she's very meticulous, and this wasn't so meticulous. As she looked into the drawers and she saw everything a mess. What they did against a person that just got out of office. And then you look at these corrupt people. You look at Hunter Biden. You look at the signature. As an example, the Auto Pen. I just signed so many different things. An admiral, a 4-star general. I'm signing them left and right, the commissions. And by the way, I want to compliment John Thune. And also Mike, our great speaker. But John Thune, all of a sudden I'm getting these things by the hundreds. I was getting one every 2 weeks. It would have been 4 years before you got them in more. You would have had some that didn't even get in, all because of Democrat obstruction. So John Thune did a great job. I must have signed 200 into the administration. We're just about caught up. It's amazing. And so compliments to John. He had to do some things that were very tough to do that he didn't want to do, but he was forced to do it by the Democrats. And as far as the shutdown's concerned, this is a Democrat Schumer shutdown. And he's trying to do it to get relevance back into the party because he's a loser. I've known him all his life. He's always been sort of a loser, but an intelligent one. But I think he's losing IQ points with time. I think that happens. I hope it hasn't happened with me. I know if it did, you guys will let me know about it very quickly.
Question on violent crime, sir. Here in D.C., a judge has given the 2 teenagers that beat up ex-Doge staffer Big Balls probation.
It's incredible.
And no jail time. Is this justice?
Jeanine Pirro is doing a fantastic job, and she is beside herself because you have these radical left judges that they beat the hell out of this guy. And it was many people against this one guy who was really trying to protect his girlfriend. He didn't want his hooded over the door but they really beat him up badly. That just happened, right? Yeah. Wow, that's terrible. I think the judge should be ashamed of himself. That's a big problem. You know, they can do their job, and then they go into a court, and the people are protected by these, I don't know where they come from. Where do these people come from? Where do the judges come from? I want to compliment on behalf of Pam and Todd and all of us because, Kash, I think that Jeanine has done a fantastic job. And the case I heard was like flawless. It's a flawless case. They have them on tape. They have everything. And then a judge gives them a little probation. These are rough guys. And they're young. And if that happens, they're going to grow up. They're going to be real bad. They're going to cause a lot of problems. Yeah, please. Go ahead.
So, Sergey Boris just gotten back from India.
Right.
What were the conversations like with Prime Minister Modi and the other?
I think they were great. He reported to me that he's a great man, you know. Modi is a great man. That he loves Trump. Now, I don't know if the word love, I don't want you to take that any different. I don't want to destroy his political career, okay? But you have to understand, I've watched India for years. It's an incredible country. And every single year you'd have a new leader. I mean, some would be in there for a few months, and this was year after year after year. And my friend has been there now for a long time, and he's assured me there will be no oil purchased from Russia. I don't know, maybe that's a breaking story. Can I say that? Would you say? There will be no oil. He's not buying his oil from Russia. It started. You know, you can't do it immediately. It's a little bit of a process, but the process is going to be over with soon. And all we want from President Putin is stop this. Stop killing Ukrainians and stop killing Russians, because he's killing a lot of Russians. Again, it doesn't make him look good. It's a war that he should have won in 1 week, and he's now going into his 4th year. That does not make this big so-called war machine look good. But he could make a settlement. We're willing to settle. I thought we had a deal. The hatred of the two leaders is very, you know, it's an obstacle. It's an obstacle. There's no question about it. But though we had a deal 2 months ago, who would think I created peace in the Middle East and can't get the two guys to settle? But I think we'll get them. But if India doesn't buy oil, it makes it much easier. And they're not going to buy. They assured me they will, within a short period of time, they will not be buying oil from Russia. And they'll go back to Russia after the war's over. Jennifer?
On the shutdown, sir, are FBI officials being paid right now? Are all the FBI employees being paid, and are all the...
Well, that's what I understand. I hope so.
Thanks to your great work, Mr. President. The 1811 special agents at the FBI are going to receive their paychecks.
Got a lot of people paid, actually. We got the people that we want paid, okay? And we want the FBI paid, we want the military paid. We got the people that we want paid. And I'll tell you, the Democrats, they don't talk about this. You know, we're getting rid of programs that we didn't like, but that were negotiated in, but we didn't like. We're terminating those programs, and they're going to be terminated on a permanent basis. And it's thousands of people, and it's you know, billions of dollars. We're getting rid of a lot of things that we never wanted because of the fact that they made this stupid move. And they don't want to talk about it. You know, they have their day coming up. I hear very few people are going to be there, by the way. But they have their day coming up, and they want to have their day in the sun. But they should really make a deal. So what we're doing, I mean, they call him Darth Vader, but he's actually a very nice person, Russell Vogt. But Russell Vogt is really terminating tremendous numbers of Democrat projects. There's not only jobs, I mean, the project in Manhattan, the project in New York, it's billions and billions of dollars that Schumer has worked 20 years to get. It's terminated. Tell him it's terminated, Jennifer. All right.
On Hamas, sir, what is your understanding of the pace of returning the deceased hostages? Are you pleased?
Well,
with
they're
that
looking
pace?
for them. Absolutely, they're looking. So we have the living hostages all back. They returned some more today. It's a gruesome process. I almost hate to talk about it. But they're digging. They're actually digging. There are areas where they're digging and they're finding a lot of bodies. Then they have to separate the bodies. You wouldn't believe this. And some of those bodies have been in there a long time. And some of them are under rubble. They have to remove rubble. But there are graves, and some are in tunnels that died in tunnels that are way down under the earth. And the tunnels are like 3 feet. Can you believe it? 3 feet high. They lived like this for a long period of time. It's a horrible atrocity. At the same time, we, meaning Israel, but I knew everything they were doing pretty much. I knew most of the things they were doing, but they've killed probably 70,000 of these people, Hamas. And I said, it's time now. So we'll see what happens. We'll also see what happens. Your next question is going to be the weapons. We want the weapons to be given up, sacrificed, and they've agreed to do it. Now they have to do it. And if they don't do it, we'll do it.
We had the head of CENTCOM today suggest that Hamas needs to hurry up and disarm and follow your comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
That it was the head of CENTCOM saying that. Is that not a signal to Hamas, to the rest of the world, that at some point the U.S. military may more directly engage?
We won't need the U.S. military. We won't need it. We're
Why
gonna
not just
well,
yield?
because we're very much involved in it. If we weren't involved, there wouldn't be peace. If we didn't destroy the nuclear capability of Iran, that deal would have never happened for two reasons. The Arab nations would not have felt bold enough to do it because you have a very powerful, at that time, Iran. It's not powerful anymore, between what we what Israel and us did, because, the attack was, if you look at it, we helped them very much. They will be the first to tell you, including shooting down thousands of drones that were coming into Israel. We shot them down. We were shooting them down like it was target practice, but we shot down thousands of drones and missiles also going into Israel. But between what we did to Iran that way with the, conventional, we will call it, and what see that beautiful plane, that B-2, I noticed it on the desk. I always thought it was beautiful, but I never understood it. Now I understand it. It took in hundreds of thousands of bombs in the form of two, but hundreds of thousands of pounds of bombs. And every single bomb hit perfectly. Then they sent Tomahawks in. They sent 30 Tomahawks on top of it. And that was totally, CNN said, well, maybe it wasn't as bad as, as Trump said, because I said obliterated. Obliterated is not a strong enough word, actually. And you saw the Atomic Energy Commission came out and said the word obliteration is very, very... Think of it. They came in under potential fire. They entered Iran airspace late at night, in the dark, no moon. The moon was low for a reason. What time we picked it. Couldn't see anything. And they hit every target, and they weren't hit. Nobody saw that plane. That plane is stealth. Nobody saw it. The problem with that is it may be stealth today, but tomorrow it won't be. And we just ordered about 20 brand new B-2 bombers. It's unbelievable as a weapon. I know Putin, when I was riding with him in Alaska, we passed a lot of them. And he said, that really did the trick. I said, yeah, it did. It's amazing. The flying wing.
But you still see no reason for the U.S. military to get involved in Gaza?
No, I don't see that. No, I think we're going to handle it very well. We'll be helping Israel. But we have other countries that are now. We signed, many countries signed. And many of those countries relatively are very strong military powers. And Hamas has no support. See, Hamas had the support of Iran. And now Iran says, don't get us involved. The last time they got them involved didn't work out too well. So they used to have the support of Iran. Today, Iran they're trying to survive. When I heard the reports 2 weeks ago, Iran's looking to build a nuclear weapon, I said, don't worry about it. They got a lot of things they want to do before nuclear weapons. I said, the last thing they want to do is a nuclear weapon. It didn't work out. And if they did a nuclear weapon before they got even close, that site would be attacked and it would be wiped out. Yeah.
Mr. President, you're meeting with President Xi in a few weeks.
Yeah.
If you can't come to an agreement or a deal at that meeting, are we in for a sustained trade war with China?
Well, you're in one now. Look, we have 100% tariff. If we didn't have tariffs, we would be exposed as being a nothing. We would have no defense. They've used tariffs on us, but we've never had anybody sitting in that chair that felt the need to do it. And they've allowed us to be $37 trillion in debt, et cetera, et cetera. Tariffs are a very important tool for our defense, for our national security. If we don't have tariffs, we're not going to have national security. As an example, if you look at Pakistan and Iran, I told them I was in the midst of negotiating a trade deal with Iran, and Pakistan was going to be in line. And because of tariffs, they all want to negotiate much differently. We're making a good deal. And then I heard that they're shooting at each other. And I said during one of my conversations, are you guys going to go to war? Two nuclear powers we are thinking about. I said, here's the deal. You go to war, I'm going to put a 200% tariff. I'm going to stop you from doing any business in the United States. I said it to both of them. Within 24 hours, the war ended. That would have been a nuclear war. And again, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, who was here 2 weeks ago, said that man saved many millions of lives in front of a whole group of people because he thought it was going to be war. But when it came to war or having to pay massive tariffs, the tariffs overrode. That's why it's so important, not only the money, we're taking in trillions of dollars, not only the money, the power to keep peace, the power to be used for good is enormous. But a lot of people didn't understand tariffs. It's also made us very rich. We have a big case coming up in the Supreme Court, and I will tell you, that's one of the most important cases in the history of our country. Because if we don't win that case, we will be a weakened, troubled, financial mess for many, many years to come. I don't even know if survivable is a good term. And if we do, we're going to be the most powerful economic country in the world. And all we're doing is using them as a defense against what took place for many years. China would charge us tariffs. It was incredible, but we weren't allowed to charge. And we're allowed to do whatever we want. We just had presidents that didn't want to do it for whatever reason. And it was nothing. But of the 8 wars, I was saying 7, of the 8 wars, I would say tariffs are directly responsible for me ending 6 of them, 5 or 6. Without the tariffs, you have wars raging all over the world. With the tariffs, other than Russia, we have no wars out there. And we've made a lot of good friends, too. Tariffs are so important to our national security. If we don't have tariffs, we don't have national security. Our country would suffer a level that, because they use so strongly on us. As an example, the European Union, they won't take our cars, they won't take our agriculture, they won't take anything, but they send their cars in, Mercedes, BMW, Volkswagen, by the millions. We don't send any cars. They don't take them. They were tariffing us out. Agricultural products, they don't take our agriculture. They want their farmers to do it. I understand that. But it was very unfair, and they were tariffing our product. They're keeping out by using tariffs. And we didn't use them, but I used them. And now we made one of the great deals with your $650 billion they pay us. And we've evened it out. It's really a good thing to see. And you have to understand, they've all signed. Japan, South Korea. I mean, South Korea, $350 billion up front. Japan, $650 billion. And they've all agreed to it. They're all happy. But before, it was a total ripoff. And if we don't have the use of tariffs, we have no national security. This country will have no financial security, will not have national security. And the people that brought the lawsuit are people that are aligned with foreign nations that are now being treated fairly, as opposed to just ripping us off and ripping us asunder. So, but if we are not allowed to use what other people use against us, there's no defense. It'll be a disaster for America. That's why I think I'm going to go to the Supreme Court to watch it. I've not done that, and I had some pretty big cases. I think it's one of the most important cases ever brought, because we will be defenseless against the world. Okay?
You'll go to the tariff case?
Did you have one? Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to ask you about the Georgia Senate race. I know it's very early, but there's several Republicans in that field that are vying for your endorsement.
A lot of good people in that field.
Yes.
I know all of them, actually. I haven't made a decision on that, but you have some very good people in the Georgia Senate race.
Well, Governor Kash has endorsed.
No, I know. The governor has, and he's spoken to me about it a lot. He likes that candidate a lot. And I understand that. I haven't made a decision yet. But I'm following that race very carefully. I think it's very important for Georgia to get a real senator, because the senator they have now is a horrible senator. He allows all the crime, all the borders. You have open borders. I mean, his whole philosophy is a disaster. That's not representative of the people of Georgia. I know the people of Georgia. I won Georgia 3 times, but they say twice. Okay, I won it very big the last time, and I won it big the first time, and I won it big the second time. But we had criminals that didn't allow. I mean, I hope they're going to go into that. I hope they go into the votes which are being stored in Fulton County, and take a real look at those votes, okay? Because I won it the second time, too. But I know Georgia very well. I love Georgia. Those people are great, and they deserve a good senator, because the man they have now is a weak, ineffective person. Okay.
New Jersey and Virginia.
By the way, you won Georgia 3 times.
Yeah, I agree. Do you agree with me?
I
And
do.
He's the media.
For someone that
He's the media.
spends a lot of time in Georgia, I believe you won that.
Yeah,
I really have a question about
The word believe isn't strong enough, right?
Yeah,
You
I
know.
There you go.
It's true. I know I won, too. We have the great Newt Gingrich. Newt, you agree with us? Good. Otherwise, I'd have him dismissed immediately from the room. You know, his wife, as you know, is becoming an ambassador to a great country, Callista. So congratulations. And we're going to take a picture. And the only reason I'm doing it, he speaks so well of me. He said, I'll go down as the greatest president in history. And then he blew it. He said, I'm not sure if I put him above Washington or Lincoln. So I'm not that happy about that, dude.
I've got a question about the weaponization of the DOJ. The media often says your department is weaponizing the DOJ.
Yeah, that's the opposite.
It's the opposite. Todd, you represented President Trump and probably the greatest weaponization of the DOJ by Alvin Bragg. You know firsthand, if you could describe what you saw under the Biden administration and how they weaponized the DOJ.
Well, I mean, I think it's hard to describe what happened those last 4 years against President Trump. Alvin Bragg, a local prosecutor, his office staffed by somebody who's Jack Smith, picked as a special counsel, staffs his entire office with DOJ prosecutors. And then there are countless things that happen. All in writing, most of them on the docket, that require no explanation except a complete abomination of the place that the Attorney General right now and Director Patel. So when people talk about this department weaponizing, it's embarrassing. Because there's no scenario in which you can look at what we're doing, restoring justice, doing the right thing in every single case, and say that that's weaponization, and yet remain eerily silent about what happened for the past 3 years. I mean, read these articles and giggle, because it cannot be true that people really think that what they did to him, not once, not twice, I'm still counting 3, 4 times, but we're the ones that are weaponizing. So this man is not weaponizing the Department of Justice. We're not weaponizing the Department of Justice. It's the opposite. I mean, and also, nobody questions what I'm saying because it's true, because we all lived the past 4 years. So listen.
They never want to bring up the details. But I watch the fake news, and oh, he's weaponized. And he wants to send them to prison. He wants all these. They indicted me like 5 times. I took a mug shot. Who would have thought it turned out to my favor? Because it was a good shot. But I had to take a mug shot. It's right out there in the door. New York Post, front page of every paper in the world. I had a mug shot. They wanted to send me, nobody says that. They say, he's acting very, very tough. He's acting unfair. Let me tell you, if they've been nice to anybody, it's to those criminals, because they are so good having to do with all of the things we're talking about today with violent crime. But if anything, I think this Justice Department has been so respectful of the law, because the other Justice Department, with Rita or Lisa and all of that scum, real scum, what they did to the political opponent of a guy that has a seriously low IQ. Now, in his case, it was low based on his career, but it got real low, okay? It was descending rapidly. But what they did to go after his political opponent is legendary, worse than any third world country, banana republic. And what we're doing is nothing. Are you kidding? Nothing. They write stories. Why aren't they doing this? And we'll leave. I don't have to leave it up to them, but I choose to at this moment at least. But there's never been anybody treated in the history of politics. You know, they say the 2 worst treated presidents by the media, etc., was that man right there, the late, great Abraham Lincoln, and this guy right there, Andrew Jackson. They say Andrew Jackson was treated terribly. They give him number 1 and number 2, but that was before I came along, Newt. I say I have number 1 times 10. Nobody's been treated like I've been treated. And I did a great job. You know, we had a great first term. And we had one of the most successful economies in history, et cetera. I rebuilt the military. We did a tremendous amount. The last part, we had a horrible thing called COVID, and we handled that well. We made ventilators for nations all over the world. We did a great job. Probably never get credit for it. Look at the therapeutics, the Regeneron, all the different things, the vaccines, all the things we did. We did a great job, but we had to focus on that. But we had the best economy in the history of our country. We're blowing it away right now. Look at the stock market. It hit another all-time high today. That's 48 days out of the few days that I've served. 48 days have already hit record highs. And we have, maybe most importantly, the number, we have now, I was saying 17, it's over $18 trillion is being poured into our country. It's because of the election and because of tariffs. Without the tariffs, you wouldn't have probably 18 cents. It's because of the tariffs, because there are no tariffs if they build in our country. And they understand that. So we have medical companies coming over. We have the AI. We're dominating China in AI. Everybody said that's impossible. We're dominating. I'm letting these massive plants build their own electric generating plants. They're becoming utilities in addition to everything. Maybe they'll make more money with that. Who knows? But they're building their own electric because we have an old grid. You wouldn't be able to do that. And we're dominating China. We're dominating with AI, which seems to be the new big thing. That's the new internet. That's the new whatever. So we're very happy with the job we're doing. I'm very happy with the job they're doing. But when you tell me about attacking a political opponent, there's never been, and I'm a legitimate opponent. I watched my son. He's got the #1 best-selling book now. My son, Eric, is a wonderful kid. That guy spent so much time with subpoenas. He got more subpoenas than anybody in the history of our country. Think of it. And he's an innocent, good boy. He's a good kid. He's always been a good kid. All of my children are good. They went through hell. My children went through federal grand juries on a hoax. Think of it. You have Adam Schiff and Hillary Clinton and others make up a hoax and then wanting to so they know it's a hoax, and they go before the press, say Donald Trump Jr. will go to jail because of what he's done with Russia. I'll never forget, I get a call from my son, Don, and he said, Dad, I'm being accused of something with Russia. I don't know anything about Russia. He didn't know anything about it. Think of it, how bad they are. They say he'll go to prison for the rest of his life. He knew nothing about it. On a hoax, the Russian hoax, Russia hoax, on a story that they made up. And they made it up in order to explain why Hillary Clinton lost an election that she lost by pretty good numbers. The second one, actually the second one was even better, but the third one, this one was too big to rig. It was just too big to rig. They would have rigged. They tried to rig it. But think of it. They want to send my children to jail, but they were after Don in particular. I'll never forget Adam Shifty Schiff, a total crooked guy, lying in Congress, making up a phone conversation that I have with you, totally made up. Then when he heard it was taped, he wanted to disappear. And Nancy Pelosi went crazy because they wanted to impeach me based on the conversation that was made up. When they heard the tape, everybody, I won it unanimously in the Republican Party. I got every single vote, something that never happens, and I beat it. But think of it, they want to put my son in jail for something that they made up. So they know they made it up. And they say he will serve the rest of his life in prison. These are sick, bad people. And don't tell me about us going after them. If anything, we've been very, very soft. I wouldn't be that soft, I'll tell you that. Thank you very much, everybody. Let's talk. Thank you very much. It's going to be built.
just to be clear, that's trillion with a T, in tax giveaways in his deeply unpopular budget. But in all of those tax cuts for billionaires, for gun manufacturers, for wealthy oil and gas companies, Trump and congressional Republicans couldn't find any room to extend the tax credits that help 22 million Americans keep their health insurance. In fact, to add insult to injury, they also cut $990 billion from Medicaid for the 70 million Americans who rely on it. Let's take a second to put Trump and Republican priorities in perspective. They passed a massive tax giveaway for approximately 902 billionaires. They slashed $990 billion from Medicaid, which covers 70 million Americans, and they decided to let health insurance help for 22 million working Americans just go away. Trump and GOP leaders are so committed to blocking anything good for Americans' health care that they are shutting down the government to prevent us from fixing the problem. That's where we are today. We all know that shutdowns are costly, wastefully, and needlessly disruptive. But not having health coverage because Republicans ended it, that's devastating. And I want to be very clear. This is about the health care of 22 million Americans, not undocumented immigrants, as some Republicans have misleadingly claimed. Those in the U.S. legally are not eligible for these tax credits, or for Medicaid, or for Medicare, for that matter. This is about the health care of American families. There is a simple path forward. Fund the government and help Americans keep their health care. While my colleagues on the other side of the aisle say we can wait to address this issue, the American people can't wait. Open enrollment for people who purchase health insurance for themselves or their families through the state marketplaces starts on November 1st. That's less than a month away. And notices are already going out the door. In Rhode Island, these notices start to go out on October 17th. And if the Republicans keep us from acting now, premiums will more than double, a 114% increase. The new premiums will be so high that many people will forego coverage. Indeed, it's likely that younger and healthier people will forego coverage, leaving those under coverage with more complicated, more expensive health care programs, also driving up the cost of health care. In Rhode Island alone, roughly 13,000 people will likely lose their health care coverage for next year because of these price increases. We need to act. Last Friday, I met with small business owners in Warren, Rhode Island. They stressed the need for this tax credit. Even with this credit, it is difficult for them to afford health coverage and keep their businesses open. One of these business people made a profound point. I call it the Uriah principle, after the first name of the proponent. And what is the Uriah principle? Simply, the most serious side effect, or one of the most serious side effects of the lack of health care insurance is poverty. Yes. When you have no health care coverage and you get ill, you can't work. When you have no health care insurance, you are in a very difficult position and you're scrambling just to get by. That's not conducive to the initiative it takes for small businesses to thrive in this country. And my colleagues are always proclaiming their devotion and dedication to small business everywhere. This is a blow to small business everywhere. Now, It's unfortunate, but Donald Trump and his handlers don't want to solve this problem. And congressional Republicans seem only to be interested in what Trump wants. Since August, right after the congressional Republicans rammed through their $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid and other health care programs, the Democratic leaders of the House and Senate have been asking to sit down and negotiate to resolve this problem. But at President Trump's directions, Republican leaders ignored the request. Trump said, don't, quote, even bother dealing with Democrats. And Republican leaders have listened. At one point, the president agreed to meet, but reversed course, apparently at the direction of Speaker Johnson, who has kept the House in recess for the last month. Finally, the day before the shutdown, the president finally agreed to meet, not negotiate, just meet. Since then, nothing. Apparently, he has plenty of time to host the president of Argentina and has no problem sending him home with $20 billion of U.S. taxpayer dollars, but he has no time to talk about helping the American people with their skyrocketing health care costs. While President Trump is ignoring this issue, he is demanding a blank check so he can run the government exactly how he wants to. And unfortunately, GOP leaders are willing to hand it to him. And not for the first time. Late last year, shortly before President Trump took office, Democrats and Republicans reached a bipartisan agreement on a full-year funding bill for fiscal year 2025. It would have funded the government for the entire year, and it would have provided critical disaster relief, funding for national defense, child care, the health care system, transportation infrastructure, and much more. But Donald Trump insisted that Republicans walk away from the agreement until he came into office so he could call all the shots. They delivered, and he took advantage. I didn't vote for the year-long CR that Trump eventually backed last March because even then, his excesses were already on full display. His wanton claims of executive powers, his firing of thousands, cancellation of grants, misuse of law enforcement, politicalization of the military, and general lawlessness were apparent. And true to his nature, under the FY 2025 continuing resolution he signed into law in March, Trump has illegally delayed or withheld federal funds for medical research, including for childhood cancer, for Head Start, for Job Corps, for disaster recovery and mitigation, for foreign assistance, including life-saving therapeutic nutrition for starving children in the world, for the Emergency Food and Shelter Program, which provides food and shelter throughout the country using the auspices of Catholic Charities, the Jewish Federation, and the United Way. He's used the so-called pocket rescission to illegally cancel $4.9 billion in foreign aid. He's even tried to close entire departments and agencies without congressional approval. To have the president sign a bill into law and simply flout its requirements like this is irksome, to say the least, particularly from members of the Appropriations Committee on both sides of the aisle. Indeed, as a member of the committee, I know how hard we work to prepare bipartisan bills every year. Some of my Republican colleagues have been privately outraged by the president's actions. A few of them have had the courage to speak up publicly. But President Trump's campaign of petty vindictiveness and hard partisan ideology continues. Trump and his budget director, Russ Vought, say that the shutdown will force them to fire federal workers. That's nonsense. From day one, President Trump, Mr. Vought, along with Elon Musk and his minions, have tried to fire federal workers by the thousands, without cause and without thought. They've terminated experts in national security and intelligence, and in some cases, they've had to beg them to return to their jobs because they were, in fact, irreplaceable. Just this past Friday, the administration fired hundreds of workers at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. But before the weekend was over, they were scrambling to reinstate an estimated 700 employees who work on critical issues like measles response and containing the spread of Ebola. The administration has also fired many other federal workers precisely because they've done their jobs with professionalism, honesty, and integrity, replacing them with loyalists who have little background or expertise to do the jobs they've been appointed to do. Trump has allowed his political appointees to rifle through the personal data of nearly every American. I asked the FBI director after Doge had gone through all his data, can he assure us that that data is not in the hands of anyone unauthorized to have it? He has mumbled a response that was really non-responsive. If you stop and step back, Doge has pilfered the data in every major federal agency, and no one can tell you where it is, who has it. That could be the greatest crime committed against the American people in the history of this country. Trump's tariff taxes are driving up costs for food, electricity, clothing, and nearly every basic necessity for American families. Small businesses are facing these same cost interest increases too. As I said, when talking to small business people in Warren, Rhode Island, they're looking at a very difficult challenge, and it's not being helped by Trump. This list goes on, as does the list of lawsuits against the administration. And for 9 months, congressional Republicans have had the chance to show some true independence, to say no to Trump on his price-raising tariffs, to say no to Trump's misuse of federal funds, to stand up to the administration's abuse of the personal data of Americans, to reject some of the least qualified and most dangerous cabinet members in history, to conduct even the most basic taxpayer oversight of the numerous conflicts of interest and money-making ventures of the president, his family, and his allies. But when their votes have mattered, they have gone along with every bad decision this president has made. If this capitulation to the executive branch continues, the Senate will be rendered a hollow, powerless body, with senators powerless to represent their constituents and states. And I would remind everyone that the iron law of the Senate is what goes around comes around. And my colleagues should ask themselves, do they want their states and constituents treated this way, the way Trump is treating his perceived political enemies, cutting off valuable public assistance to blue cities, putting U.S. forces into blue cities, military in violation of the Posse Comitatus Act? I think the answer would be no. And what's good for one side has to be good for the other side. Now, the president is not popular. What he's doing on every issue now is not popular. Costs matter to Americans in every state in this country. And this healthcare debate is all about cost. One of the ironies is some of the biggest impacts of these healthcare changes will be on the red states. Everyone suffers across the country, but there's significant suffering in places that are prominently Republican. So why are my colleagues on the other side of the aisle saying, oh, we don't care? They should think long and hard about that and remember why they wanted to be senators in the first place: to improve the lives of their constituents, to help, to serve. And that requires compromise here. We saw that last week when we passed a National Defense Authorization Bill with overwhelming bipartisan support in very efficient and rapid procedures. When you get compromise, bipartisan compromise, you get results. When you get a body that seeks only to carry out the will of one person, you get what we have now. Stalemate, sufferings by poor people who can't get health care, but great benefits to the wealthy. For the last several months, appropriators have been working on bills to protect and invest in the American people. Together, we passed 8 appropriations bills out of the committee, most on overwhelmingly bipartisan votes. 3 of those bills have been passed by the full Senate. And throughout this process, Democrats have shown our commitment to doing the hard work of government. We've been flexible and willing to compromise. And frankly, if it was in the Senate's power, both Republicans and Democrats, we would have legislation, appropriations legislation, before the president today. But we have been unable to because of the roadblocks he's established using his leverage over my Republican colleagues. In fact, I think it's fair to say that President Trump and Speaker Johnson don't really want compromise and don't really want Congress to pass appropriations bills. They want Democrats to go away and give them another blank check, another CR. But forget whether it's a CR or an appropriations bill. If the president doesn't like the program, he just takes the money away, which is contrary to the Constitution, but that's just a detail. It takes 60 votes to pass a law here in the Senate, so Democrats will be here ready to reach a principal agreement on spending and protect the health care of 22 million Americans. We're ready. We just need the president and the speaker and the majority leader to sit down and talk, not about their partisan interests, but the welfare of their constituents. And I yield the floor.
Continues to have on individuals, families, and communities across our states and the nation. Though the issue of domestic violence often remains hidden behind closed doors, it's a reality that affects millions of Americans every year, both in communities large and small, urban and rural, and unfortunately, across my own home state of Kansas. While national headlines may briefly focus attention on this issue when a tragedy occurs or a public figure is involved, our commitment to ending abuse must remain constant after the news cycle moves on. The statistics regarding domestic violence are staggering. Domestic violence that occurs in between partners, girlfriends and boyfriends, husbands and wives, affects more than 12 million people every year. On a typical day, every 9 seconds, a woman is assaulted in the United States. In Kansas, law enforcement reports nearly 22,000 incidents of domestic violence annually. These aren't statistics from faraway places. They reflect our friends, neighbors, co-workers, and family members. We have a responsibility to bring hope to those who feel afraid to speak out. I want to recognize the Kansans who dedicate their lives to that mission, those who work and volunteer in shelters, crisis centers, advocacy organizations, and law enforcement across the country. Their compassion and courage makes a difference every single day. In Iola, Kansas, Hope Unlimited provides a lifeline for victims seeking safety and support, working hand in hand with local law enforcement and first responders. Hope Unlimited's advocates are trained volunteers, deliver services for victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. Their coordinated response model ensures that survivors are met with care the moment they reach out. We know that when victims are turned away or forced to travel long distances for help, 90% return to their abuser a reminder of why access to local support is critical. Across Kansas, similar organizations like Safe Home in Johnson County, Stepstone in Wichita, the Crisis Center, Inc. in Manhattan, are helping survivors rebuild their lives with dignity and safety. What happens in Washington, D.C. matters, but we change the world one person, in fact, one soul at a time. And in communities across Kansas and across America, that's exactly what's happening. The federal government plays a meaningful role in supporting these efforts through programs like Legal Assistance for Victims Grant. Kansans have access to legal representation that helps survivors navigate the justice system and reclaim their sense of safety and stability. The work is far from over. Domestic violence is more than a law enforcement or a policy issue. Each of us can and must play a role in ending it. This month and every month, let us recommit ourselves to breaking this cycle of abuse. Let's do our part to speak out against violence in all its forms and to stand with those who've been silenced for too long. Let's raise the awareness of this silence and devastating issue and bring hope to those who need it most. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Texas.
Mr. President, I rise today to speak about Oswaldo Paya and, as I've done before, to urge this body to honor his legacy. Paya was a Cuban dissident who fought against the communist regime and who stood up and fought for free speech, for democracy, and for human rights. He was a thorn in the side of the Cuban communist regime his entire life. Oswaldo Paya was the only person at his school who refused to join the communist youth. Later, at the age of 35, he founded the Christian Liberation Movement, which called for nonviolent disobedience against the rule of the Cuban Communist Party. He then founded the Varela Project, which sought a referendum on Cuba's communist system. Throughout, he fought for democratic governance, religious liberty, freedom of expression, and the freedom to start businesses. For over 3 decades, Paya put pressure on the communist regime to free its political prisoners, to allow for genuine elections, and to uphold basic human rights. In retaliation, the regime harassed him. They arrested him repeatedly. And ultimately, in 2012, they killed him. But in life and in death, they never succeeded in silencing his message. Growing up, I heard countless stories from my father about life in Cuba. And they instilled in me from a very young age the desire to fight for change, to fight for truth, to fight for freedom. The yearning for liberty and the courage to fight for it is universal and deeply felt in every Cuban heart. Mr. President, since 2015, in every Congress, I have introduced legislation to rename the street outside the Cuban embassy Oswaldo Paya Way. This body has passed it before, rightly, unanimously. Oswaldo's legacy matters deeply to Cuba and to the United States. And it matters to his family, with whom I have worked closely on this resolution. Over the years, I've met many times with his daughter, Rosa Maria Paya. And Rosa Maria is herself a formidable and courageous dissident and warrior for human rights. Renaming the street in front of the Cuban embassy would help preserve that legacy. During the Cold War, President Reagan renamed the street in front of the Soviet embassy Sakharov Plaza, after the famed human rights dissident in the Soviet Union. It was part of a broader strategy to shine a light on the abuses of the evil empire. My strategy here is the same. Some might think a street name is not that big a deal. Well, it is. Anyone who wants to write to the Cuban embassy will have to write Oswaldo Paya's name. Anyone who wants to go there has to look up the address and see his name. The operatives of the Cuban regime will have to say or write his name. Saying his name has power. In just a moment, I will propound a unanimous consent request to take up and pass the Oswaldo Paya Way resolution. And I want to point out this is bipartisan legislation. Indeed, I am joined by Senator Dermott, the Democrat whip, in this legislation. In a previous Senate, this passed the Senate 100-0. That means every Republican voted for it and every Democrat voted for it. I am hopeful this Congress can demonstrate the same unity and the same resolve to stand up in support of democracy and in support of human rights. Right now, we will find out if that's the case. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs be discharged from further consideration of S-218 and the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration. I further ask that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there an objection?
Mr. President.
Senator from New Jersey.
Reserving the right to object. I stand in agreement with my colleague. Mr. Oswaldo Paya is an extraordinary hero, not just to the Cuban people, but to millions of Americans, including millions of New Jerseyans, and especially to the Cuban American community in my state. He is a freedom fighter who stands for our most treasured and sacrosanct ideals. I want to work with my colleague to find a way to honor him. I'd be willing to partner with him in doing something to elevate this cause and this principle and the noble ideals that my colleague speaks to. The challenge right now is that we are in different times. This bill would permit Congress to rename a DC-owned intersection. But the District of Columbia has the right to self-governance. When I was mayor of the city of Newark, if my state came in against my objections to rename streets on my city, I would have objected. The people of the District of Columbia have the right to control their own local affairs. Their rights are enshrined in home rule. It is critical that we reject attempts that infringe upon those rights. The locally elected DC Council alone has the right to rename DC streets, and there is no dispute that the intersection in question is DC-owned. Since the beginning of home rule, the Council has opposed congressional efforts to rename its streets. Recently, Representative Holmes Norton strongly has made her views known, that she opposes this bill on those grounds. Washington, D.C. has no representation in this body. We must respect the wishes of the locally and democratically elected council and D.C.'s representatives in Congress. Indeed, these democratic ideals are what we are talking about right now. This objection is not about recognizing the courageous work of Oswaldo Paya. I will tell you, I have a deep reverence and respect, and I offer again, I will do anything I can to support the elevation of this hero, of this democratic light. Mr. Paya bravely fought for freedom and democracy in Cuba. He was killed due to his heroic work. I hope perhaps our Congress can appropriate resources to do something to honor this noble man and his ideals. I hope we can think constructively about what else we can do. His work should be recognized more by our nation. And I would support the D.C. Council, their elected representatives, if it decided through their democratic process to work with the senator and the Democratic sponsor to rename the street. My objection is simply right now about Washington, D.C.'s right to control their own local affairs. This objection is about home rule and self-governance. Now, it is true, as my colleague said, that this has passed through this chamber multiple times. But you would understand if D.C. is pushing for us not to do it this time because the current administration in the White House has stepped up their efforts to undermine home rule, is looking to D.C. as a testing ground for extreme policies. The fact that D.C. has been deprived of statehood makes the people of the district feel even more vulnerable under this president to the policies of the administration. They are asserting in an even stronger way with me and others who feel a fidelity to the home rule ideal that we should take a stand now. We cannot make D.C. and its residents more vulnerable still by further eroding and encroaching upon the District of Columbia's right to self-governance. That is a sacrosanct ideal that our country has stood for. No taxation without representation. The ability to elect your governing officials and entrust upon them to make decisions for your community. It is under these principles and ideals, Mr. President, that I object, and it is with a sincere heart that I offer my colleague the willingness to work with him on other ways we might be able to bestow an honor on this extraordinary hero.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President,
Senator from Texas.
I must say the objection from my friend from New Jersey is deeply unfortunate. The remarks that he gave were unfortunately seriously in error. The senator from New Jersey suggested that it is only the D.C. City Council that has the power to do this. That is objectively false. D.C. is a city unlike any city in America because D.C., the Constitution explicitly gives the authority to govern D.C. to the Congress of the United States. That is written into the Constitution. My friend from New Jersey said he would object if this were done in Newark, New Jersey. Well, Newark, New Jersey is not in the Federal District of Columbia, which the Constitution gives to Congress to govern. It's also objectively disproven by the example I gave. We have done this before. When Ronald Reagan was president, he signed into law legislation renaming the street in front of the Soviet Union Sakharov Plaza. The author of that legislation is someone, Mr. President, you and I still serve with. He is the senior-most serving member of this body, Senator Chuck Grassley, then a brand new senator, introduced the legislation to rename the street in front of the Soviet embassy, and it was part of shining a light on communist oppression. Now, the legislation that the senator from New Jersey just objected to is Cruz-Durbin. Its lead Democrat author is Senator Dick Durbin, the whip for the Democrat Party. This is not partisan legislation. And indeed, this exact legislation, Senator Booker, who just objected, voted for it. Just 2 years ago in this Congress, it passed 100-0, and one of those 100 was my friend Senator Booker. He voted yes. By the way, one of the most vocal advocates of this legislation was Senator Booker's former colleague, Senator Bob Menendez, another Cuban American. And there is a rich irony, because after Florida, the state of New Jersey has a massive Cuban American population. To see a senator from New Jersey objecting, I know this is not his intent, but the communist government of Cuba is cheering right now because they do not want to acknowledge Oswaldo Payá. They murdered him, and they don't want to have to say his name. They don't want anyone to say his name. And I know there are Cuban American residents of New Jersey whose hearts are heavy right now. They are hurting to see their elected senator object over not just honoring Oswaldo Payá, but calling out the regime. Senator Booker suggests, oh, some other general statement, Payá's a nice guy, we should do that. That's not the purpose here. I'm happy to support any resolution praising Oswaldo Payá. I've done so many times. The purpose here is to put pressure on the Cuban communist regime. And naming the street does that. Now, Mr. President, as I pointed out, Senator Booker voted for this identical legislation just 2 years ago. This bipartisan legislation. That leads to the obvious question, what has changed? And one thing has changed. The residents of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. When Senator Booker voted for this bipartisan legislation, Joe Biden was the president. Today, Donald J. Trump is the president. And unfortunately, our Democrat colleagues have decided bipartisan cooperation is no longer something they're interested in. Their party is instead unified behind one principle, which is that they hate Donald J. Trump. We're in day 15 of a government shutdown because the Democrats are unwilling to fund the federal government, unwilling to pass a clean continuing resolution, which, by the way, every one of them, including the senator from New Jersey, have given speeches about how it is reckless and irresponsible to shut the government down, not to pass a clean continuing resolution, and yet just earlier today, almost every single Democrat voted for the 9th time in the last 2 weeks to shut the government down, whereas Republicans unified to reopen it. This weekend, there will be a rally in D.C. of left-wing radicals, the so-called No Kings rally. Many, if not most of us, on the Republican side of the chamber believe the reason the government is still shut down is because Democrat senators are terrified for that rally to occur and those left-wing radicals to see that the government is open, because they have to demonstrate they hate President Trump. Just this week, President Trump announced an historic Middle East peace deal. And yet, virtually zero Democrats could bring themselves even to say his name. Bill Clinton praised President Trump for the Middle East peace deal. Hillary Clinton praised President Trump for the Middle East peace deal. I commend Bill and Hillary Clinton, and I will say in my time in the Senate, that is the first time that sentence has ever come out of my mouth. I commend Bill and Hillary Clinton. But why is it, indeed, Senator Booker put out a statement about the Middle East peace deal, that nowhere in it was President Trump's name to be found? I mentioned at the beginning of my remarks, there is power in saying his name. Just as the Democrats are terrified of saying the name Donald J. Trump in any way connected to anything positive, so too are the Cuban communists terrified of saying the name Oswaldo Paya. I am hopeful that my friend, the senator from New Jersey, will put aside the partisan rancor that characterized the Democrats in this body, and will say, let's come together and stand for the Cuban people. Let's stand for Cuban Americans in this country. Let's stand for freedom. Let's stand for democracy. Let's stand for human rights. That ought to be bipartisan. Time will tell whether it continues to be in the United States Senate. I yield the floor.
I recognize the senator from Iowa. I recognize the senator from Iowa.
I come to the floor to speak about the Pentagon's unending audit failures and to once again call for corrective action. People who have been in the Senate a while know I've been continually talking about this issue for many times. So many, I don't know how many, but I think it's something I need to keep beating the drum about. The fact is that the Pentagon is the only government agency that can't get what's called a certified audit, or sometimes referred to as a clean audit. The only agency of the federal government. I have been conducting oversight on this issue since the audit began in 1993 and spoke about it many times. Today, I provide my colleagues with a new update. Recent Government Accountability Office testimony may have pinpointed the root cause audit problem. It's called, quote unquote, the universe of transactions. It's a special bucket of transactions manually transferred from several hundred systems. It should play a pivotal role in the audit process. In theory, the universe of transactions is an accurate record of every transaction in financial statement balances. Auditors should be able to follow audit trails to verify samples taken from those balances. In practice, it doesn't work. The data is inaccurate and incomplete. Transactions can't be matched. Audit trails don't exist. So audits fail. I found essentially the same disconnect in the Inspector General's first audits 30 years ago. Those audits contained these telling words, quote unquote, no audit trail found. It's the same old problem. No controls over transactions, then, none today. The Marine Corps recently developed a workaround for the no audit trail. It's a predicament that needed attention, and they gave it some attention. As a result of giving it some attention, the Marine Corps earned 2 clean opinions, but they did it the hard way. The Marines had to create missing audit trails with labor-intensive pick and shovel work. They dug up, ran down, matched, and verified each transaction. Obviously, the Marines deserve credit for a job done well. But manual audit trail reconstruction is not a very cost-efficient alternative to modern accounting systems. Fully integrated systems are the solution. They're called for in the Chief Financial Officers Act that mandated the audits that I'm talking about. Instead of investing in modern systems, Pentagon bureaucrats keep pouring millions year after year into ancient systems that belong in the junk heap. 35 years and billions of dollars down the rat hole, and the DOD is still scratching their heads wondering how to control transactions. Surely they know traders solved that problem thousands of years ago when records were first kept on clay tablets. So why is the Pentagon still in the Stone Age? It's due to incompetence and deliberate bureaucratic foot dragging or whatever. Getting a handle on every transaction is the key to success, and therein lies the rub. Integrated systems are needed, but there's relentless resistance to acquiring them. I call on Secretary of War Hegseth to create a team of independent system experts to examine and resolve this problem. Controlling transactions is the heart and soul of every accounting system, except, as you see, in the Pentagon. Until that truth is accepted, clean opinions will remain nothing but a pipe dream. I yield the floor.